Say my name.
Heisenberg.
You're goddamn right.
What if I told you this scene isn't about a deal, it's about a craving? On the surface, this looks like a simple negotiation. A group of dealers meet in the desert. Money is on the table. Product is discussed. Terms are argued. But underneath all that, something far more dangerous is happening because Walter White is no longer here for money. He already has that. He's not here for survival either. That version of him died the moment he defeated Gus Fring. What's left now is someone chasing a feeling, a very specific one. Fear, the kind of fear that makes people hesitate before speaking, the kind that forces grown men to lower their voices, the kind that turns a name into a warning. And in this scene, Walt doesn't just want respect. He doesn't even want control. He wants to feel that fear again. That's why this conversation slowly stops being about business and starts becoming something else entirely. Something personal, something psychological, because by the end of this scene, Walt isn't negotiating a deal. He's forcing someone to prove that he still matters, and the way he does it tells you exactly who he has become. This scene takes place in Season 5 at a point where Walter White has already defeated Gustavo Fring and stepped into a position of power. With Gus gone, the old drug empire has collapsed, and Walt, along with Jesse Pinkman and Mike Ehrmantraut, begins rebuilding a new operation using stolen methylamine and a mobile cooking setup. But the situation is unstable. Mike wants out of the business. Jesse is ready to walk away, and the risk from law enforcement is increasing. So Mike arranges a deal with a distributor named Declan to sell the methylamine and end everything cleanly. Walt refuses. Instead of exiting, he pushes for expansion. He sets up a meeting in the desert, not to sell the product, but to take control of distribution itself. What begins as a business negotiation quickly turns into a psychological power struggle where Walt is no longer trying to secure profit. He's trying to establish dominance. Mike doesn't walk into this meeting as a partner. He steps back. You play, Walter. You are on your own. On the surface, it sounds like delegation. But psychologically, it's something much heavier. Mike is removing himself as a buffer, the experienced enforcer, the man who usually absorbs tension. By stepping out, he forces Walt to stand alone in front of Declan. No protection, no mediation. And that matters because Walt isn't just stepping into a deal. He's stepping into a test. Up until now, Mike has always been the one who commands quiet respect. He understands the rules of this world. Walt doesn't. Walt has power, yes, but he still lacks recognition in spaces like this. So, when Mike withdraws, he's not empowering Walt. He's exposing him. And this is exactly the kind of situation where Walt's psychological need begins to activate, because now there's no one else to validate his position. If he wants control, he has to take it. And more importantly, he has to be seen taking it. Now the stage is set for Walt to prove something, not just to Declan, but to himself. And as soon as Declan speaks, you can already feel the imbalance.
Looks like you're about 1,000 gallons light here, Mike.
This line isn't aggressive. It's casual, almost dismissive. But that's exactly what makes it powerful. Declan is speaking as if he's still in control of the situation, as if the deal is already his. And Walt is just there to fulfill it. There's no caution in his tone, no curiosity, no recognition. And that's the problem, because for someone like Walt, who is now addicted to being feared, indifference is worse than disrespect. If Declan had come in hostile, at least that would mean he sees Walt as a threat. But this is worse. This is someone who doesn't see him at all. So Walt disrupts the entire frame immediately. The methylamine is not coming. This is the first real shift in the scene. Walt isn't responding to Declan. He's rewriting the situation. In one line, he removes the foundation of the deal. The thing Declan came for is no longer on the table, and psychologically, this is important, because Walt is doing two things at once. First, he's taking control of information. Second, he's forcing Declan into uncertainty. Now Declan has to ask questions. Now Declan has to react. The power dynamic starts to tilt, but it's still not enough, because Declan doesn't respond with caution. He responds with confusion.
Why is that? Who the hell are you?
This is the moment that defines everything that comes after. That question, who the hell are you, hits directly at Walt's core, because Walt is no longer just operating as a businessman. He's operating as someone who needs his identity to be acknowledged. And in this moment, it isn't. Declan doesn't know him, doesn't respect him, doesn't fear him, and that creates a psychological gap that Walt now feels the need to close. This is no longer about methylamine. This is about identity, and you can see Walt's first attempt at answering that.
I'm the man who's keeping it.
Notice what he does here. He doesn't give a name. He doesn't establish reputation. He defines himself through control. The man who is keeping it. It's an authority-based identity. Functional, strategic, but it lacks weight, because control without recognition doesn't satisfy Walt anymore. So, he escalates. You are dealing with me now, nodding. This is where Walt makes his first real move toward dominance. He doesn't just claim control of the product. He replaces Mike entirely, and that's a big shift. Mike is the one Declan trusts. Mike is the one with credibility. By removing him from the equation, Walt is forcing Declan to accept a new hierarchy. But here's the deeper layer. Walt isn't just taking control of the deal. He's taking control of how he's perceived. He doesn't want to be the guy behind the operation. He wants to be the face of it, because that's where the fear comes from. Walt could have let Mike handle this. That would have been the smarter move, the safer move. But Walt doesn't want safety. He wants presence. He wants recognition. He wants to feel that shift when people realize who they're dealing with. And right now, that hasn't happened yet. Declan still isn't taking him seriously. The room hasn't changed, so Walt keeps pushing, because what he's really chasing here isn't control of the deal. It's the moment where the room goes quiet, and someone finally sees him. And this is exactly where the scene begins to evolve, from a negotiation into a psychological battle for
Why
dominance.
don't you just cut to what it is you want or what you think is going to happen here?
Declan isn't threatened yet. If anything, he's irritated. He's trying to speed things up, reduce this situation back into something simple, a transaction. In his mind, Walt is still just a complication, not a force. And that's important, because the more Declan treats this like business, the more it frustrates what Walt actually wants from this interaction. Walt doesn't want to cut to the point. He wants to control the point. So instead of simplifying, he expands.
1,000 gallons of methylamine is worth more in my hands than it is in yours.
This is Walt reframing value. He's no longer talking about ownership. He's talking about capability. The implication is subtle but powerful. Declan may have the infrastructure, but he doesn't have what truly matters. Walt, and this is where the shift begins. Walt starts positioning himself not as a supplier, but as the core asset.
But I need distribution.
A simple line, almost humble, but it's deceptive, because this isn't a request, it's a setup. Walt is creating the illusion of partnership, while slowly constructing a hierarchy where he sits at the top. He lets Declan feel useful, but only within a system that Walt controls, and then he makes the offer.
So if you agree to give up your cook, sell my product instead, I'll give you 35% of the
On paper, this is absurd. Walt is asking Declan to dismantle his own operation and accept a minority share in someone else's system. And Declan reacts exactly how you'd expect.
35%. Mike, please tell me. This is a joke.
This is rejection. But more importantly, it's ridicule. Declan laughs. He looks to Mike, not Walt, because in his mind, Walt still doesn't matter. He's not even worth responding to seriously. That glance toward Mike is a subtle dismissal of Walt's authority. And this is where things start to get personal, because now Walt isn't just being ignored. He's being undermined. You know how far we had to stick our necks out. Why the hell would we want you? Declan is asserting independence. He's saying, we don't need you. And for Walt, that's the worst possible position to be in. Because if they don't need him, they won't fear him. And if they don't fear him, then everything Walt is chasing in this moment collapses. So Walt changes tactics. He stops negotiating, and he starts dismantling. I know all about your operation.
You produce a meth that's 70% pure, if you're lucky.
Now the tone shifts. This is no longer a proposal. It's an attack. Walt goes directly at the one thing Declan takes pride in, his product. And he doesn't just criticize it. He reduces it, makes it sound amateur, inferior.
What I produce is 99.1% pure.
This isn't just a statistic. It's a statement of superiority. Walt is introducing a gap, not just in quality, but in identity. Declan runs a business. Walt represents perfection, and Declan's response says everything.
So,
That one word is resistance. Declan refuses to accept the hierarchy Walt is trying to impose. He doesn't care about purity, or at least, he pretends not to, because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging Walt. So Walt escalates again. But this time, psychologically, it's grade school t-ball versus the New York Yankees.
Yours is just some tepid off-brand generic cola. What I'm making is classic Coke.
This is where Walt does something very deliberate. He translates chemistry into humiliation. These analogies aren't just explanations. They're comparisons designed to shrink Declan, to make his entire operation feel small, outdated, irrelevant. And more importantly, they're memorable because Walt isn't just trying to win the argument. He's trying to rewrite how Declan sees himself. Now, every time Declan thinks about his product, he's going to hear those comparisons. That's psychological positioning. And for a moment, it works. You can feel the shift. The laughter fades. The tone tightens. But Declan doesn't submit. Instead, he pushes back harder. So, if we just waste you right here, then there's no more Coke on the market, right? Now the threat enters the scene. This is no longer about ego. This is survival logic. Declan is testing whether Walt's confidence is real, or if it collapses under pressure. Because, in this world, power isn't what you say. It's what survives a threat. And Walt doesn't flinch. Do you really want to live in a world without Coca-Cola? This is a turning point. Walt doesn't respond to the threat with fear. He refrains it. He shifts the focus from violence to dependency. He's no longer the one at risk. Declan is, because killing Walt doesn't solve the problem. It creates a new one. No product, no quality, no edge. Walt transforms himself from a target into a necessity. Walt isn't just defending himself here. He's enjoying this because every time he flips the dynamic, every time he takes control of the room, he gets closer to that feeling he's chasing. That moment where people stop seeing him as optional and start realizing he's essential. But even now, it's not complete. Declan is still standing, still resisting, still not fully convinced, which means Walt hasn't reached the moment he really wants yet, the moment where resistance disappears and something else takes its place, fear. And to get there, Walt is about to escalate even further. Declan doesn't back down. I need you to listen to me. We are not gonna give up on this deal to be your errand boys. Do you understand? This is resistance in its clearest form. Declan isn't just rejecting the offer. He's rejecting the position Walt is trying to put him in. The phrase errand boys is intentional. It reframes Walt's proposal as humiliation, as if accepting it would mean lowering themselves beneath him. And psychologically, this is Declan trying to regain control of the hierarchy. Because up until now, Walt has been slowly pushing himself upward, through logic, through quality, through intimidation. Declan feels that shift, and this line is his attempt to stop it.
for what? Watch a bunch of junkies get a better high?
Now he trivializes the entire business model. He reduces Walt's product to something meaningless, something not worth restructuring an operation for. It's another defensive move. If the product doesn't matter, then Walt doesn't matter. But Walt doesn't respond emotionally. He responds with precision.
A better high means customers pay more. A higher purity means a greater yield.
This is Walt switching to cold logic again. He's dismantling Declan's dismissal piece by piece. There's no ego in this delivery.
That's $130 million of profit that isn't being pissed away by some substandard cook.
And here, the ego slips back in, because now Walt doesn't just present numbers. He attaches judgment. Substandard cook. That phrase is deliberate. It's not about the money anymore. It's about reinforcing superiority. Walt is layering two pressures at once. Logical pressure, more profit. Psychological pressure, you are inferior. And together they start to corner Declan. Because now, rejecting Walt doesn't just mean losing money. It means accepting inferiority. And that's much harder to do. But Walt doesn't stop there. Now you listen to me. This is a shift in tone. It's sharper, more commanding. Walt is no longer negotiating. He's directing.
You've got the greatest meth cook in America. No, the two greatest meth cooks in America, right here.
And this moment is subtle, but extremely important, because Walt brings Jesse into it. At first glance, it seems like he's strengthening the offer, but psychologically, it's doing more than that. Walt is using Jesse as proof, as an extension of his own credibility. But look at Jesse's reaction. He's surprised, almost uncomfortable, because Jesse understands what Walt is doing. He's not praising him. He's positioning him, using him as leverage. In a negotiation Jesse doesn't even fully want to be part of anymore. And Mike sees it too. There's a quiet recognition there. Mike doesn't interrupt. He doesn't correct Walt, but he understands the play. Walt is taking control, not just of the deal, but of the people around him. This is manipulation. Clean, calculated, effective. And with our skills, you will earn more from that 35% than you would ever on your own. Walt closes the loop. He connects everything, quality, profit, skill, into one clear conclusion. You need us. But Declan isn't convinced yet.
Just wondering why we're so lucky. Why cut us in?
This is skepticism, but it's also curiosity. Declan is starting to engage differently now. He's no longer dismissing Walt outright. He's questioning him, and that's a shift, because questions mean consideration. Walt senses it. Mike is retiring from our crew, so his share of the partnership is available. Now Walt introduces a new angle, opportunity. He reframes the deal not as a takeover, but as an opening, a vacant position that Declan can step into. It softens the dominance just enough to make it acceptable. And if you give him $5 million, just think of it as a finder's fee. Again, clean framing. Walt makes the transaction feel structured, reasonable, almost fair. He removes friction by organizing the chaos into a system.
We have 40 pounds of product ready to ship.
Are you ready?
This is confidence. Forward momentum. Walt is no longer asking. He's assuming the deal is moving ahead. And for a moment, it feels like it might. But then, Declan pauses. He looks at the meth, studies it, thinks, and then he asks the question again. Who the hell are you? This is the second time we hear this. But now it means something different. The first time, it was dismissal. This time, it's curiosity mixed with uncertainty. Because something has changed. Walt has proven value. He's demonstrated control. He's held his ground under threat. And now, Declan is trying to understand what he's really dealing with. But for Walt, this question hits even harder the second time. Because despite everything he's done, the logic, the dominance, the control, Declan still doesn't know him. And that's the gap Walt has been trying to close this entire time. Not the deal, the recognition.
You know. You all know exactly who I am.
Walt's response is calm, control, but underneath it, there's something building. You all know exactly who I am. This is no longer about business. This is identity. Walt stops presenting evidence. He stops explaining. He assumes recognition, even though it hasn't fully been given yet. Because now he's not trying to convince Declan. He's trying to force him. And this is the turning point. Everything up until now has been strategy, negotiation, persuasion, manipulation. But from this moment forward, Walt shifts into something else entirely. Ego. Because the deal is already won on paper. The numbers make sense. The product is superior. The structure is solid. Walt doesn't need to push further, but he does. Walt isn't chasing the deal anymore. He's chasing the feeling. That moment where the other person stops questioning and starts acknowledging. Where uncertainty turns into fear. Where a name carries weight. And right now, Declan is close, but not there yet. He's thinking, calculating, processing. But he hasn't submitted. He hasn't said it. And Walt can feel that. Which is why what comes next isn't necessary. It's not strategic. It's not required for the deal. It's something else, something personal, because Walt is about to stop negotiating entirely and demand something far more important to him.
Say my name.
Everything in the scene builds to this line, and what makes it powerful isn't the words themselves. It's the intention behind them. This is not intimidation in the traditional sense. Walt isn't threatening violence. He isn't raising his voice. He isn't even moving aggressively. He's asking, but psychologically, this is the most aggressive thing he's done so far, because what he's demanding here is not compliance. It's submission. Up until now, Declan has been engaging with Walt as a negotiator, someone to argue with, someone to evaluate. But this line forces a shift in roles. Walt is no longer asking to be understood. He's demanding to be acknowledged. And more importantly, acknowledged in a very specific way. Not as Walter White, not as a cook, but as a name that carries fear. Walt isn't doing this to secure the deal. The deal is already his. He's doing this because he needs to feel something. That same feeling he experienced when he stood at the top after killing Gus Fring. That moment where he wasn't invisible anymore. That moment where people knew who he was and feared it. And right now, Declan hasn't given him that.
You what? I don't have a damn clue who the hell you are.
Declan resists, and this resistance is crucial because it stretches the moment. It delays the payoff. It creates tension. Declan is still holding on to his position, still refusing to fully step into the role Walt is assigning him. And for a second, it almost feels like Walt might lose control of the moment, because, without acknowledgement, the identity Walt is trying to project doesn't exist in this room. So Walt escalates again. But this time, he doesn't use logic. He uses reputation.
I'm the cook. I'm the man who killed Gus Fring.
This is the line where everything changes, because Gus Fring isn't just a name. He's a symbol. He represents power, control, and touchability. And by claiming responsibility for his death, Walt isn't just giving information. He's rewriting the power structure of the entire drug world. In that moment, if Gus was at the top and Gus is gone, then what does that make Walt? And you can see it land. Declan pauses. His expression shifts. The confidence fades. There's a moment of calculation, of doubt, where he tries to process whether this is real. Because if it is, then everything changes. The man standing in front of him isn't just a cook. He's the man who replaced Gus. And now, the fear starts to enter the room. Not loudly, not dramatically, but subtly, in the silence, in the hesitation, in the way Declan looks toward Mike. Not for permission, but for confirmation. And Mike doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. That silence is the answer. And in that moment, the power shifts completely. Walt sees it. He recognizes it instantly. That shift in energy, that hesitation, that quiet realization. This is what he's been waiting for. This is the feeling. And he leans into it.
Now, say my name.
This time, it's different. The same words, but completely different weight. The first time, it was a demand. Now, it's inevitable, because Declan is no longer resisting from a position of confidence. He's hesitating from a position of fear. And that's the difference. This is the moment where the dynamic breaks, where negotiation ends and submission begins. Declan looks at him. There's a pause, a small one, but heavy, because in that pause, Declan has to make a choice, continue resisting or accept the reality that has just been placed in front of him.
Heisenberg.
You're Heisenberg, he says it quietly, not with confidence, not with defiance, but with recognition. And that's all Walt needed, because the volume doesn't matter. The hesitation doesn't matter. What matters is that he said it, he acknowledged it. He gave Walt the one thing he came here for. And Walt responds immediately.
You're goddamn right.
This is the payoff, not just of the scene, but of Walt's entire psychological trajectory, because this line isn't about Declan anymore. It's about Walt. It's the confirmation he's been chasing, the validation, the proof. In that moment, Walt isn't thinking about the deal. He's not thinking about the future. He's not even thinking about the risk. He's feeling it. That same feeling he experienced after Gus died. Power, importance, fear, and more importantly, recognition. Because for Walt, being feared is no longer a side effect of what he does. It's the reason he does it. And this scene proves it. He could have ended the conversation earlier. He could have walked away with the deal secured. But he didn't, because the deal wasn't enough. Money wasn't enough. Control wasn't enough. He needed to hear it. He needed someone else to say the name so he could believe it himself. And that's what makes this moment so revealing, because it shows that Walt isn't just building an empire. He's feeding something, an addiction, not to drugs, not to money, but to the feeling of being someone who matters, someone who is seen, someone who is feared. And in this desert, surrounded by men who didn't know him just minutes ago, he forces that reality into existence, not through violence, not through force, but through psychological dominance. He makes them see him. He makes them say it. And for Walt, that's the real victory.